Hey everybody, welcome to the show. You know where you are, the 9 at 9 with me, Tigo. And you know I love bringing experts, but today is super special. Why? Because if you know me at all, you know I love sports, all kinds of sports. And if you love sports, you love knowing what's going on behind the back, behind the end zone, what's going on the biggest tennis courts of the world. So who's the best person to ask? Oh, we know because he's here. So if you want to know what's going on in sports right now, if you want to know what it's like to be a sports reporter, sit right there. We'll be right back.
Expert Talk is sponsored by Pod Nation TV, the podcast to broadcast network.
Yeah, you heard me right. I'm talking about he's written in the New York Times, okay? He's written in USA Today and tons of other publications. He's covered hockey. He's covered the All-Star games for hockey. He's covered the NBA finals. He's covered the Olympics, and he's the writer of A Different Stroke, Serena and Venus. Yeah, this man knows his sports. Cecil Harris here. What's up, Cecil?
How are you, Tigo?
I am awesome right now, man. It's like having box seats in any sport having you on the show. This is awesome.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. Okay, we got to dig in. First, I got to answer the question. What made you decide you wanted to be a writer first, and then you wanted to write about sports?
Well, growing up in Brooklyn, New York, like most of the boys in my neighborhood in Bedford-Stuyvesant, I wanted to be an athlete, but I didn't grow up to be as tall as some of my friends. So that turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I had to prepare for a real job that would last decades, not maybe a few years in the NBA. So I took to marrying writing and sports. My father was a Baptist minister, so he was good with words. And I would see my father prepare his sermons on Saturday night, deliver them on Sunday. So I grew up with an affinity for words and I loved sports. So I decided to marry those two things. And I found out a sports journalist career lasts a lot longer than a typical athlete's career.
Wow. Okay, so I know somebody's out there. There's a young person right now that loves sports. They too feel that they're either too tall for the sport they want to play, or they're too short, or they just feel like they're not going to be part of that 1%. And they're going, wait a minute, I can write. I'd love to write about sports. If somebody wants to get started in that field, how do they do that?
I think internships are a great way to start. I had an internship while I was at Fordham University, an internship at Gannett Newspapers in Westchester. And I would be on the desk editing. And then when they found out that I really loved to write about sports too, they sent me out to New York Giants practice, New York Jets practice. Eventually, I started getting bylines. So an internship is a great way to be around people who do for a living what you want to do, and you find out how they got there. And if you can get some clips out of it, that's all the better. But if you can't get an internship, blogging is a great way to get started in writing. You find out who's writing about what you're interested in reading. And let's say it could be a basketball blog. You could reply to the stories you see in the blog, ask to write a guest blog, make a connection with those bloggers, and that can lead to full-time work in your field.
So if you're an independent, you don't have the luck, the blessing to be hired by some of the major publications such as yourself, and you start in blogging and you go, okay, I started in blogging, then I did podcasting, now I'm doing video podcasting, blah, blah, blah. And I really want to start covering pro sports. Is that even possible if you don't have like the New York Times behind you?
I think it's possible if you can get to know people in that sport. Every team, for example, has a media relations director. And if through that person, you can find out who's getting credentials for these events and ask to get credentials for the event. So if you're able to, let's say, get a credential for a Las Vegas Golden Knights game in the NHL, you do have access to the coaches and the players, and you're writing about them just like someone who's writing for one of the daily newspapers or working for one of the websites.
that's awesome.
And through that kind of exposure, you can match your skills against theirs and also learn from the more experienced journalists. Make sure you can first make a connection with the sports teams in your town, sports information directors for UNLV or Nevada, and the media relations directors for the pro teams. That opens a door at least and gives you exposure to them, and you can meet the more experienced journalists and really take it from there. A lot of people who are covering sports full time now started with their own company, or like a one-person band, so to speak.
Wow.
But if you have the same access to the players and the coaches, you're covering the team too. And people can read your work, hear your work, see your interviews, and say, hey, she's really good. And that opens more doors, but you have to get out there first.
That's amazing. Okay, so I kind of hinted. I mean, you have written for the New York Times, the New York Post. You've done it for USA Today. You're an author. You've just been doing this thing for more than, I'm going to say, 6 months or a year. You've been at it for a little while. What was your best interview that every time you think of one of the greatest, it pops in your head?
Actually, I covered a Knicks game, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was still playing for the Los Angeles Lakers, and I had a chance to interview him. And I brought a copy of his first autobiography, Giant Steps, because they say you're not supposed to ask for autographs, but I brought it with me. I would interview him first, use the hardcover for my notebook, and then at the end ask him to sign my book, and he did.
Wow.
So it was a thrill to be able to meet him and interview him first, do my professional thing first, and then very quietly get him to autograph my copy of his book.
Well, I was going to ask you, is he a really nice guy? But he must have been, because he autographed your book, right?
Yes,
you know, I've always been a super fan. Now, I know you're also the author of Different Strokes, not the sitcom, you guys.
Right.
Different Strokes, Serena and Venus. What was that like? What made you decide to write that book?
Well, I had an interest in men's team sports until 1994 when I saw this 14-year-old black girl, Venus Williams, whose father says, oh, she's going to be the greatest player in the world one day. And she's turning pro. And that just isn't routinely done. A 14-year-old girl turning pro, competing against grown women. So I followed Venus's career very closely. And when I found out that she really had game, I said, I'm going to root for her. I'm going to really follow her career closely. And then I find out she has a sister 15 months younger, Serena, who's even better. And that really got me hooked on the Williams sisters. And when I met Richard Williams for the first time at the 2000 US Open, he said to me, and this is when Venus was on the verge of being number one, he said, Serena's going to be even better because she understands angles better and she's meaner.
Okay. And she's meaner.
She doesn't take any stuff. Not that Venus does, but Serena, you've seen her. Everyone has seen her. She is a fiery competitor who really hates to lose. She brings that intensity to the court. Not only does she have the best serve in the history of women's tennis and the best return of serve, she has the highest level of intensity of anyone who has ever played a sport. And you could match her intensity with that of Michael Jordan or anyone else who's ever played any sport. She's phenomenal in that regard.
She is definitely the GOAT when it comes to tennis. But I got to ask you, you've had the opportunity of meeting them. Are they as cool in person as they seem to be on that court?
I think they are, and I would love to be able to spend more time with them away from the venues. I've been able to interview them at tennis tournaments, but it would be great to hang out with them. I wish I had the opportunity to do that, but it was great to interview them at tournaments, especially the major tournaments, US Open, Wimbledon, French Open, Australian Open, because you have to win 7 matches against 7 different players with different styles. So you have to be able to think on your feet. And I think that Serena and Venus don't get quite enough credit for their tennis IQ. They are extremely intelligent players. And that has helped them survive so long in the game, from turning pro at 14 to now Venus is 41, Serena's 40. They haven't retired yet. The people they broke in against back in the 90s have long since retired.
Yes,
and Venus and Serena are still going strong.
Okay, so before we get out of here, we got to talk about for just a minute. I heard that Serena changed coaches. What does that mean? Does it mean she's like going for the great? What is that? What's going to happen next?
Well, Serena needs one more major title, as you know, to get to 24 and equal the all-time record set by Margaret Court. But Serena's 23 trumps Margaret Court's 24 because Margaret Court played in the Australian Nationals when it was only Australian players. So Serena has the record that most people respect, the open record. She wants 24, though, and I think she believes that her new coach, Bethany Maddox-Sands, can at least impart the kind of strategy and look at her from a fresher perspective, because Bethany is still an active player. And her previous coach, Patrick Mouratoglou, works with Stefano Tsitsipas, works with Corey Goff, spreads himself a bit too thin. I think Serena wants someone who's going to be working with her first.
So what's next for you, Cecil, before Alan, who's going to cut us off? I hope he gives us an extra minute because this is amazing. What's next for you, sir?
I'm taking a look at baseball, the declining presence of African Americans in Major League Baseball. And I see a book there because there are certain societal pressures. Young men see so many players becoming instant millionaires in the NBA or becoming successful in the NFL, boxing, mixed martial arts, and baseball, the former national pastime, doesn't quite have the same appeal. And I think that needs to be seriously examined to just really document what has happened when baseball goes from 25% African-American presence to now less than 8%.
See, we need another hour. We need another hour. You got to come back. I'm telling you, there's not enough time for the greatness that you have within you. Sir, how does somebody find your books? How do they get in touch with you? What do we tell them?
Well, my website is cecilharrisbooks.com. My books are available at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever books are sold, as they say. It's in stock. Different Strokes, Serena, Venus, and the Unfinished Black Tennis Revolution. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Cecil Harris. I'm easy to find, and I hope you'll find those books because in the case of Serena and Venus, they have revolutionized their sport, and they have become global superstars, and they're just as successful in business as they have been in tennis. So I want everyone to really know the totality of what Serena and Venus have accomplished. And not just great athletes, they have become global stars.
Well, you know, we have a segment we call the VIP experts, and we bring them in for a couple of segments, and we only talk about like one segment instead of this overview that we did today. I would love it if you'll come back. We could just talk about tennis. We could talk about baseball, the basics of writing. Heck, I just want to sit and just listen to you tell stories. I'll be honest.
Well,
I think you're amazing, sir.
Let's do it.
Please come back. Please come back. You are fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time.
Woohoo! Yeah, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hey, man, we're talking about sports. You know I'm happy. My face is all red. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You know I hope you'll come back next time. Mr. Harris said he'll come back and we're just going to talk about tennis. Or we're just going to talk about baseball. We're going to talk about whatever that man wants to talk about because he's a legend in this field. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Go to tigodirect.com. If you did not get his web address, you know you can connect direct and it costs nothing to you and nothing to him. As always, I'm Tigo, and I'll talk to you next time. Ooh, sports. Yeah, man.